There is research that says that we receive 11 million bits of information every second, but only process 50 of them. Which means that when we communicate, there's a real danger that the message we intend our audience to get might not actually be received by them. Number two, human brains are inherently lazy. We're constantly looking for shortcuts, constantly looking for excuses not to do the work. It's one of the reasons we like patterns, why we like routine. Which means that if we present information in a way that gives our audience an excuse to disengage or get distracted, they're going to take it, they're going to walk away. And thirdly, everything we say, from the time it hits the ear of the listener to the time their brain makes sense of it, goes through so many different filters that there's a danger that the message we intend our listener to get won't actually be the message they take away from us. Let me show you what I mean. Rob, grab that, you're going to need that for 2 seconds. So, can I ask everybody to pick up that piece of paper? We're going to do a very quick exercise. While we're doing this exercise, you might be tempted to ask questions. Please resist that temptation. You got a piece of paper over there?
Yeah.
Great. So, before we do this, right, can I ask a quick question? How many of you, because I gave you a piece of paper, how many of you assumed you needed a pen? That was a filter kicking in. You don't need a pen for this exercise. So all I'm going to do is give you the instructions. Please don't ask questions just yet and follow them for me. So can I ask you please to hold a piece of paper in both hands, and can I ask you to close your eyes? I promise not to sneak out of the room. So with your eyes closed, please fold the piece of paper in half and tear off the right-hand corner. And then fold it in half a second time. And again, tear off the right-hand corner. And fold it in half a third time. Going to start and tear off the right-hand corner. It's going to start to get a little bit harder, so feel free to make those scrunched up, grinding your teeth type faces. And then fold it in half a fourth time. One last time. And again, tear off the right-hand corner. And for those of you who are currently wondering, do I have permission to use my teeth? The answer is yes. Although, sorry, forgive me, what's your name down the back?
Gemma.
Gemma and I accept no responsibility for what happens to your teeth. That's all I'm saying, right? So that's 4 folds and 4 tears. Everybody got that done? Grand. Do me a favour, open your eyes. Unfold the piece of paper and hold it up for everybody to see. And just have a look around at everybody's piece of paper. Right, so everybody's got the same piece of paper. Let me see what you have. Yes, blank piece of paper. Here's my question. Given that everybody had exactly the same instructions, how come we've ended up with so many different results? You can put your papers down for me. This is the audience participation part today. How come we've ended up with so many different results?
Because you didn't say both more.
So what you're actually saying is it's my fault.
Yes. Yeah.
But actually, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Because I didn't say top right-hand corner or bottom right-hand corner, but that's how we present information. The instructions that I gave you were perfect from my perspective, but they left far too many gaps from your perspective. And that's how we present information. Secondly, everything we say is open to interpretation. And I think one of the things we need to be looking to do when we communicate is find ways to reduce the opportunity for misinterpretation. So what I'm going to ask you to consider over the next roughly 20-25 minutes is consider thinking differently about how you communicate. How do you craft your message in such a way that you give yourself the best chance of having your audience get, receive, and buy into your ideas and take away the message? That's what we're going to do. To get stuck into this, I'm going to first of all introduce what I call the 4 essential criteria for effective communication. I'm also going to build this 25 minutes around one discipline present of communication, which is sales presentations, but the ideas will apply to email to voicemail to text messages, to pretty much all forms of communication. So that's what we're going to do. My 4 criteria, and I think you have to meet these. Number 1, what you say must contribute to the thinking of your listener. And that seems like the most obvious piece of advice to give anybody ever. But too often, we deliver our message from our perspective. We focus on what we want to say and not on what the other person needs to hear. And that gets us into trouble. Many years ago, I was leaving the house one Monday morning. I wasn't going to be back until Wednesday evening. And as I was walking out the door, my wife says to me, "Would you do me a favour? Pick up my mum Wednesday. She's coming up to the house for dinner." I went, "Yeah, no problem." So you know where this is going already. I arrive in Wednesday evening. Very first thing my wife says to me is, "Where's my mum?" To which I went, and this doesn't help, I went, "How am I supposed to know?" And she went, "You were to pick her up." "No, I wasn't." "When did you ask me?" "Last Monday." "No, you didn't." "Made you out." "Totally my fault." Can I just say to all of the women in the room, it will always be our fault. We just won't admit it, right? But because it wasn't relevant to me, as much as I love my mother-in-law, wasn't that relevant to me, I ignored it. The second thing that I think we have to do is make sure that what we say is easy to remember or recall. Because people don't always need what we give them on the day that we give it to them. I don't know what businesses you're in, but there'll be times you'll be pitching for business. And maybe you're pitching and you deliver your pitch and somebody else, a competitor comes in and another competitor comes in. And the people that you're pitching to, they might not get a chance to sit down and talk about your offering for a day, a week, a month. So how do you make sure they can remember what you said long after you've said it? Thirdly, it must be easy to understand. The previous speaker, Kevin from the pension plan, talking about pensions and investments and insurance in that area. And you had, I'm just talking about you, saying that the nature of the subject matter that you talk about, you have your own language. And one of the challenges on occasions is that you're talking to people who don't always understand the language. So it's about trying to simplify it and make it as easy as possible for everybody to understand. The fourth thing, it must engage. People have to feel that they're part of the process. And even on occasions when it's just us talking, people have to feel like they're involved, even if they don't get a chance to verbalise that response. Now, right now, if I say to you an hour from now, what are the 4 criteria? The chances are you won't remember them. This might help. I coach people on is what I call true presentations. So they're my criteria, and what I would ask you to consider is that could you keep them at the forefront of your thinking when you're communicating with people? Could you work out how to craft something in a slightly different way that might make it easier for them to recall what you've said, make it easier for them to understand what you've said, or do it in such a way that they're engaged as part of the process? So from a presentation perspective, many people will think of a presentation as a single standalone event, a single component. I break it down into 6 different parts. I'm going to take you through these parts. Before I do, and in fairness, you didn't do any of what I'm about to say, and that's a good thing, just for the record. A couple of weeks ago, I was speaking at an event, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk to you about some of the things I think we should be doing, but I'm also going to make reference to some of the things that I believe we shouldn't be doing when we present, which perhaps some people are doing. And a couple of weeks ago, I gave out some of these ideas and tips, and 2 people before me had done a couple of these things, and it caused an issue with one of the speakers. It is not my intention to offend any speaker ever, just so we're aware. So the first part of this, pre-presentation. You've been asked to give a presentation. Where do you start? Well, the first place not to start. Don't get up from your desk. Don't walk down the corridor to one of your colleagues and go, "Excuse me, can I borrow the slides that you used for last week's presentation?" We've all done that at some stage. And the reason we do it is because we don't have time to prepare presentations. But unfortunately, for me, it's square peg into round hole thinking. We have something that exists already, and we're going to try and shoehorn it into this particular opportunity in front of this particular client. The second don't, in my opinion, is don't take out your existing set of slides. Don't go to the first slide and change the date and the name of the people you're presenting to. You're presenting to different audiences. they have different requirements, and we have to be able to tailor our content to those requirements. So where should we start? In my opinion, you start by asking and answering two questions. Question number one, who's your audience? Who are you actually presenting to? Whether it's age-related, gender-related, profession-related, whether it's industry-related, it's about tailoring content to reflect what's important to them. Last year I was working with a guy down in Cork. He was going over to Boston in July, and he was delivering a presentation on the very same subject to 3 different audiences. The first was senior management, the second was middle management, and the third were the tech professionals. The presentation to senior management was 10 minutes long and spoke only about the business opportunity. The presentation to the tech professionals was 45 minutes long and spoke only about the tech and how it would work and what it would look like, and made no reference to the business opportunity. So I think it's really important to be clear about your audience. Second question, what's your objective? What do you actually want your audience to do, to think, to believe, or how do you want them to act at the end of your talk? Very often when we present, we see it as a standalone event. And because getting up here can be nerve-wracking for people, the thought process is often, I want to get up and do this, I want to get it over and done as quickly as possible. But in principle, what we actually want is for our audience to take the next step afterwards, which hopefully is the step that we would like them to take. So it's about being clear about the objective. In theory, there are 4 objectives: to motivate, to entertain, to inform, to persuade. Let's remove entertain and motivate just for one moment, and that leaves to inform and it leaves to persuade. Often from a sales presentation perspective, people will deliver an informative presentation. But by definition, if I just give you information, in essence I'm saying, here you go, but I don't really want you to do anything with it. But what we want is people to take that next step. So I think everything we craft should be a persuasive presentation. I think if you're crafting a presentation and you're answering that question, you should start with, my objective is to persuade, and then finish that sentence however it's relevant for you. They're the first 2 things. Third thing we need to do in the pre-presentation stage is brainstorm. Whether you're working as part of a team or whether you're doing it individually, the fact is you are experts, and it's about trying to get as much information out of your head as possible so that you can pick the best pieces of information to justify why they go in front of that audience to try and help you meet that objective. Last August I was working with an organisation called the Galway Convention Bureau. One by the name of Rose was going over to London in October to deliver a 2-minute pitch to associations over there. Her job was to get them to bring their conferences to Galway in 2019 or 2020. We spent 2 days working on a 2-minute pitch. We spent 2 hours alone working on the brainstorming part. And after 2 hours, she went, Eric, that's it, I have nothing, I've given you everything, I have nothing else to think of. And as I was turning to write something on the flip chart, she said, in almost a throwaway comment, she went, oh yeah, of course, Galway is known as the city of the tribes. And as soon as she said it, I went, that's what we're going to build your presentation around. Because, and you're all familiar with this, people who are members of associations often speak about being among their tribe. In the opening 30 seconds to her 2-minute pitch, the word tribe was used 7 times. When she was finished, one of the people who came up to her afterwards came up and said, we always hold our conferences in the UK because that's where our suppliers are. I'd like to come across and have a look at Galway. And that's the job. Can we get people to take the action we would like them to take when we have finished? That's pre-presentation. So now I'm going to bring the presentation open. And if I said to you right now, what's the objective of an opening presentation? You'd say, some would say it's to introduce yourselves. Some of you would say to me, it's to engage your audience. And for those who say it's to engage, I would agree, but I would phrase it slightly differently. For me, it is to disrupt our audience's thinking. You have so many things going on in your lives right now that my job is to try and stop you thinking about them. If any of you left home this morning and you have a child who's sick, if any of you had a row with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, although hopefully not them all at the same time. If some of you have a project that has to be complete by 12 o'clock tomorrow and your company sent you here, you might be thinking, my time would be better spent working on that project. My job is to try and stop you thinking about those things. Very quickly, 3 things not to do at the beginning of your talk. The first is the grateful opening. You know the one? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak to you today. It has no value to your audience. We do it because we're nervous, we do it because we want to ease into a talk. The second one, the apologetic opening. Forgive me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry, but the technology is not working. It's not my friend today. I hope you'll understand that I don't quite get this perfect. The third one, the introductory opening. When I say the introductory opening, I mean the big, long-winded introductory opening. Indulge me, we're going to play what I call the so what game. I'd like to give you a series of sentences, and I'd just like you all to say so what after each of them. Will you do that for me? Okay. Hi, my name is Carraig Fitzpatrick. I'm from a company called Carraig Speaking and Training. We've been in business since 2009. We're based in Dublin. We have 3 people working for us. Some of you are enjoying that way too much. But can you see how none of that is relevant to you?
Yes.
You're not here for me. In fact, I'd argue that if I couldn't turn up here today, there isn't anybody in this room today who would go, I'm not going. Eric's not going to be there. You're here because you're home, apart from Rob, right? Brandon, look for Rob later on, yes. But my point is this. If I was introducing myself, and I haven't even introduced myself, but if I was introducing myself, it'd be, hi, my name is Carraig Fitzpatrick. I'm from a company called Carraig Speaking and Training. And over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to share with you 3 ideas that can transform your next sales presentation. That last sentence, that's the only bit you care about. And if you change somebody else's name and somebody else's company, that last sentence stays the same, that's what people are interested in. So what can we do at the beginning of a talk to capture or disrupt or engage our audience? We can start by asking them a question. Sorry, for me, what time is it, please? Yeah, you see how it works? Brilliant, every time. I'll have a quick look. So we can start by asking a question. We can start by telling a story. We can start by getting our audience to do something. We can start by stating the outcomes, and particularly when you get into an environment when you're in front of senior management, start by stating the outcomes. Tell them why they should continue listening to you, whether you're speaking for 10 minutes or half an hour, whatever it is. You can start with humour. You can start with facts and figures. There's so many things you can start with. One thing not to start with, don't start with a joke. Number 1, it's not as funny as you think it is. Number 2, you can't tell it as well as you think you can. And number 3, and probably more importantly, if you're going to stand in front of anybody and say that you're an innovative solution to a problem they might have, and you start with a joke that they could have Googled off the internet as you Googled it off the internet, your credibility as somebody innovative is going to be in trouble straight away before you even start. So one of the things I am going to do here, at the end of this, remind me, I'm going to put my email address up there. If anybody wants it, I have a copy of a presentation template that I am more than happy to send on to anybody if you want it, if you find this to be of value. So that's presentation openings. I'm now going to do presentation closes. So the don'ts. The first don't, where possible, don't finish on questions. And I know that's not always easy, but there are times when, if you can control it, you get to the end of your talk, you go, right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of my talk. What I'd like to do is just throw it open to the floor for questions, and then at the end of it, I have one thing that I would like to wrap up with. That one thing you wrap up with, that might be the only thing people remember. I can tell you that I speak at a rate of 134 words a minute. Yes, I'm a sad individual, I timed it. But it means if somebody says to me, when you speak for 10 minutes, I know I've only 1,340 words. The reality is you're going to forget all of them. The best words that have a chance of being remembered are the last words you hear me speak. And I think they should be my words rather than my answer to your question. The second way not to finish a talk is with a PowerPoint slide that has 2 words on it. What are those 2 words? Any questions or thank you? For me, I think it would have far greater value if the last thing that people saw on a slide there was a reinforcement of your message. Because even if you take what's going to happen here, when I finish, I'm going to thank you and I'm going to walk off here, and that slide will be left up there a fraction longer. And that's a chance for my message to be reinforced for that little bit longer, and that might be what helps it be remembered a day, a week, a month later. Ways to finish a talk. Finish with a call to action. Tell people what you want to do. You did brilliantly. You told people 2 things: who you were, where you come to, and also where your stand was. Absolutely encourage them to come to that stand. Really well done, in my opinion. You could finish by asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, if what I've talked about today makes sense, would it not be a good idea to work out what your calculation might be? And all you're looking for is giving people the roadmap. Or to finish by telling a story. It doesn't happen terribly often, but once in a while I will get asked to pitch for business, and I'm asked to deliver a presentation in the form of the pitch because I'm going to be helping people with their presentations. And I often finish with the following story. In 2012, I was approached by a business development manager. He wanted me to help with a presentation. He said up front, we're not winning the business, we just want to do the best job possible. He said, we want to give ourselves a chance that in 4 years' time we might win the business. So we crafted a presentation that had no slides. Because of their area of expertise is maintenance, we actually built a presentation around physical hand tools. So we crafted it, we practiced it, he went off and he delivered it. He rang me the day after, he went, Eric, it went really well, thanks. He rang me a month later. He went, Eric, we don't know what's happened, but we've just won a contract worth €1 million. Now, I'm not standing in front of anybody saying the presentation won the contract. What they can do for the client won the contract. But while a great presentation won't guarantee you win the business, a bad presentation will ensure you don't. I'll help you create a great presentation. 2 benefits of finishing with a question. The benefit of finishing with a question or finishing on a story is this: you create time. So I can tell you what to do, but nobody likes being told what to do. But if I finish by asking you a question, if I finish by telling you a story, you've had time to make sense of them in your own time and in your own way, so that you can actually come to the decision that I would like you to come to, but feel like you have done it by yourself. So there's huge value in finishing those ways. Right, a couple of things. 1, message. If you're speaking for 45 minutes, if you're speaking for 15 minutes, if you're speaking for 5 minutes, 1 message. People often try to give too many messages. The problem with giving more than 1 message is that because everything we say is open to interpretation, what will happen is people will take those 3 messages and they will merge them into a different message, and it may not be the message we want them to take away. If you have 1 message and your audience gets that 1 message, that's the job done. That's absolutely the job done. The next thing that I just want to share with you is presentation structure. And everybody's familiar with the idea that you have an opening, a middle, and a close. But let's imagine you're speaking for 20 minutes. Your opening could be 2 minutes, your closing could be 2 minutes. That 16 minutes in the middle is a long time to keep people engaged. So what I think we should be doing is looking to break it down into smaller component parts. Again, you did it really well. You had these 5 different points you wanted to cover. And it was very easy to follow when you talked about one and then you moved on to the next. It was really powerful. The challenge I think we have is that sometimes we don't deliberately insert a structure into our talk. And what happens is we invariably put a number of structures in, and they actually contribute to confusing the audience if we have too many structures. All I'm going to do at the moment is just give you 1 structure. The structure I'm going to share with you is a numerical structure. You're familiar with it, it's nothing spectacular, but it works really well. You see it in January every year. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 ways to get fit this January. But whether it's somebody speaking that, whether it's a video, whether it's online, it's a very easy way to follow a presentation. And the benefit of it is not just that it's easy to follow, but it's also allows you to re-engage if you get distracted. I'd love to think that nobody's been distracted for the last 15, 20 minutes, but at different stages you've been thinking about some of the things that are more important in your lives. My job is to try and make it easy for you to re-engage with the talk. A numerical structure allows you to do that. If I say to you, the first way to get fit this January is do more exercise, and you listen and go, I'm working 6 days a week, I don't need any more exercise, I don't need to listen to this, you can actually switch off. Now, to make it easy for you to re-engage, the point at which you hear me say, now, the second way to get fit this January is, that's a point at which you can re-engage and you can actually forget about everything that's come before that. The added benefit, if it's a numerical structure, if I give you 5 ways to get fit this January, and when you hear me say the 3rd way to get fit this January is, what's the other thought goes through your mind? Great, we're halfway through. I can hang on a little bit longer, we're nearly there. So it's easy to keep us engaged that little bit longer. So every time, pick 1 structure. It could be numerical. It could be, yours was modular. So you had those 5 different areas, and if somebody had said to you, instead of giving 30 minutes, do 15 minutes, you could literally have taken out 2 or 3 of them and it wouldn't have had any impact on your presentation except for the content, the amount of content you would have given. But it would still have flowed really effectively. You could use a rhetorical question structure. You could use a case study structure, a features and benefits, a situation solution. The key, pick one. And then the other thing that I want to say very quickly, that stands, AE, stands for audience engagement, non-accidents and emergency, as somebody said to me one day. And the principle of it is this, in my opinion. My job as a presenter is to start here and to get to there. And when I get to there, know that you have come on that journey with me and you have got the message I intend you to get. But whether that's 5 minutes or it's 30 minutes, it's a long time to keep you engaged. So I think what we need to do is find ways to capture your attention, tear the piece of paper, give you content, a little bit of humour, content, tell a story, content, more humour, content, reference something that was said earlier. And all the way, what I'm trying to do is get you to this point so that 1, you haven't got disengaged here, or 2, you haven't picked up the wrong message at the end of my talk. The ideas I mentioned in the opening, questions, getting the audience to do things, they are all engagement techniques. I'm going to share one more engagement technique with you. Very quickly, if you don't mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have 4 of you up here for 1 second? I know you're thinking I could have sat here for the day and it would have been fine and comfortable. That's not going to happen right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have always wanted to do this. Pick a card, any card. Don't everybody see what it is? Pick a card, any card. Oh, hard look. Pick a card, any card. Pick a card, any. Don't everybody see what's written on it? You're going first. And what I would like you to do for me is I'd like you to draw a physical representation of what's on that card and make it as, I take the card, and you can make it as easy as possible for your audience. Because you're right-handed, I'm going to ask you just to stand here so your audience can actually see it. Your job, ladies and gentlemen, as soon as you know what's been drawn, please shout out the answer. A bicycle, brilliant, it's fantastic. I haven't even seen it, I bet you it's brilliant. You're next. Fair play to you. Right, you're next. Again, make it as easy as possible for your audience. As soon as you know what's being drawn, just stand on this side so they can actually see it. As soon as you know what's being drawn, shout out the answer.
Flower. Daisy. Sunflower.
Yes,
Sunflower.
brilliant, fantastic. There's a moment there we're going to go through the whole range of flowers. Right, you're currently looking to go, why the hell didn't I get bicycle or sunflower? Now I'm going to take that. Grand. Again, as soon as you know what's being drawn, please shout out the answer.
Broken in. Feisty.
Sorry, just remember, you're doing brilliantly. You're just being let down by this.
I'm genuinely stuck, but I use words.
No, you can't use words. I made that mistake once. Somebody said, can I use words? I went, yeah. And they wrote down the word that was on the card. Surfboard. Right, there's my 5. I'm going to stop it at 5 there for a moment. Tell them what the answer was, please. Risk. Can you see it now? No, you can't. Don't nod your head and go, yes, you can. No, you can't. Right. You guys came to this room this afternoon, aren't you?
Excited.
Yes.
I don't know what to do with this.
You don't know what to draw with this. This one has been, I'll hold it to the card. But this has been got. People get this one. Okay. So again, your right hand, just stand here if you don't mind, so that people can see the flip chart. I know right now you're thinking it's not going to make any difference that they can see the flip chart. Right, away you go.
Vision. Yes. Vision. Future.
All right, now hang on. There's my 5 because we're getting quite close to it right now. That's actually a really clever. That is a really clever attempt at what you're doing because I can see what you're doing. Tell me what the answer was, please.
Strategy.
Perfectly clear now, isn't it? Now, do me a favour, give them a big round of applause. That's for you, and that's for you. You can go back down for me, please. Here's my question. Given that, what is the why was it so much easier to get the bicycle and the sunflower than it was to get the risk and the stride?
Because I can't draw.
Because they're things versus concepts. Actually, that's not quite the correct answer. People say to me it's because they're objects, we can get the bicycle and the sunflower. That's not correct. The reason we can get them is because they're already in here. You went searching in this existing bank of knowledge until you found something that resembled the sunflower or vaguely resembles the bicycle, and that's where it made sense. One of the best ways that you can take your message and bring clarity to it, particularly when you're talking to people who don't know what you do, is to attach it to something they are already familiar with. I'm on time, so I just want to finish up by asking you this, right? You're not allowed to answer these questions for very obvious reasons. What I've spoken about for the last 30 minutes, has it contributed to your thinking?
Yes.
Do you think that some of what you've heard today will be easy to remember or recall, even if there's a couple of people going, I don't want to remember or recall what was going on? Yes? Was it delivered in a way that was easy to understand?
Yes.
Was it engaging?
Yes.
I would absolutely encourage you to take a little bit of time to think carefully about how you communicate. For me, communication is a bit like driving a car. If you drove here today, it's quite possible that you don't remember putting on your seatbelt. You don't remember changing gears. You don't remember driving past some of the landmarks you know you must have driven past. The way we communicate today is similar to that. If we could find a way to do it a little bit more deliberately, you have a chance to increase your bottom line profitability. You have a chance to engage your employees far more effectively. And the thing that I've seen lately is you have a chance to build a layer around your brand so that you can protect it when people look to shut it down. Can I just say thank you very much, everybody, for your time and for coming to this room this afternoon. I greatly